No, I really don't. What happens all the time is you got these keyboard warriors that's going to go out there and run their mouth all the time, and then they don't ever have to face their consequences. And people tell me all the time, is this incumbent of a United States Senator? And I remind people, I'm a guy from Oklahoma first, and there's consequences for doing some of this. I get there's people on social media that'll do this constantly. I'll never see them. This guy, I did. And this wasn't his first time. He did this to me 5 separate times. I ignored it every time. And then the last time when he said, you know where to find me, anytime, anywhere, cowboy, I thought, maybe this could be a good thing. Maybe we could do this for charity. If he really wants to be this tough guy and be this, this union boss of the Teamsters, who said that, mind you, in 2022, he said he wants to bring back the mob mentality back to the Teamsters. This is the same guy in 2013 that was suspended by his Teamsters for harassing and intimidating them. I thought, maybe this guy could be taught a lesson and we could just do it for charity.
What do you mean by that, for charity? Because this looked like you almost came to blows in the middle of
Well, but I had already challenged him before this. Prior to this, I had said, when he first put out that first tweet, actually that was the 5th tweet, I put out, okay, challenge accepted, September 30th, Tulsa, Oklahoma, for charity, MMA fight.
See.
And of course, he didn't say anything until right before this hearing, he started running his mouth again.
You mentioned MMA fight. You are an MMA champion. I noticed that when you were getting up in an escalator, you're playing with it right now, you reached for your wedding ring. What was that about?
Well, I wasn't mad, first of all. So when you get mad, you get angry, you lose your mind. First thing I thought of when I stood up, I thought, I'm going to break my hand on this guy's face. I'm going to take my wedding ring off. Because when you're fighting, you learn how to punch correctly. You really shouldn't break your hand, but when you aren't doing it with wraps.
So you actually thought you were going to come to blows in that moment?
I had full intentions of doing that, absolutely.
Let me play for you something that your Republican colleague, Tom Tillis, just told my colleague on Capitol Hill about that.
I would have bludgeoned the guy for a lot of things that he'd said, but I wouldn't have gone as far as Markwayne. And we need to pay attention because kids pay attention, countries pay attention, the people in this nation pay attention. And they oftentimes emulate our behavior. This is where we've got to stand up and be the adults in the room.
What do you think about that? I mean, you're a father of 6.
Right.
Do you want them to emulate that?
I tell my kids, you're responsible for your words. If you want to be a bully, expect to be treated like that. And if you should be able to stand up for other people that are being bullied too. I'm not somebody that's going to say we go around and fight all the time. I got paid to fight. But I will say that every now and then, you do and you should be taught a lesson because you can't simply just continue to do this. So what point does a line get drawn? Remember, it was Andrew Jackson who challenged 9 people to a duel and finished one person off. He also knocked a guy out for insulting his wife.
Senator, Andrew Jackson was not a good guy.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that what happens, well, Abraham Lincoln challenged a guy to a sword fight. You had a duel. You've seen the bloodstains on the steps in the Capitol.
Sumner.
And I'm not saying that has to happen, but I'm saying that people like him, this mob mentality Teamster boss that wants to sit there and continue to do that because he thinks he can intimidate people, at some point that has to stop too, because I'm not supposed to just sit there and absorb it. He needs to be called out for his actions. The fortunately thing is I'm capable of doing it. What about the people that can't? I can do something about it, and maybe I can stop him from doing it again. What are you supposed to do with bullies? Ignore them or stand up to him?
Well,
and he's a bully, and I want to stand up to him.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, because I hear what you're framing this as is he's the bully. You, of course, are a United States Senator. I mean, we were just looking at this horrible news this morning. Jonathan Lewis, 17 years old, was killed, was beaten up to death outside of his high school. And it was because he was bullied. But what about the bullies? What about them potentially looking at your behavior, no regrets, the potential of coming to blows in the middle of a hearing saying, well, if a senator can do it, why not me?
The difference is that I was standing up to the bully. If my boys were there and they were beating on this 17-year-old, I guarantee you all 3 of my boys would have jumped in and defended this guy because that's the way I raised them. I was going after the bully that would have beat that 17-year-old to death if he was around a crowd. That's the difference between the two. I've never bullied anybody in my life. I stood up to a lot of people. I've been bullied myself. I was born with bad legs and had braces on my legs and had a super bad speech impediment until I was in grade school. I understand what bullying is. I learned how to do one thing because I couldn't argue with you and I couldn't run from you because I had bad legs at the time. I learned how to fight. I'm not saying that's the answer to every issue, But I did learn one thing. If you push back at a bully, typically they'll shut their mouth up. You know what Sean did? He didn't stand up. He had the fear of God in his eyes. And I guarantee he won't do that again to me.
Senator Markwayne Mullin, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.